Hey, left, right out. This is March 17th. Some interesting things after. So the Fed raised their Fed funds target rate to a quarter of a point to half a point, or I mean, it always fluctuates within a quarter point. Um, Pretty much, like I said yesterday, like shooting a BB at an elephant at this point. I'd imagine that their quantitative easing, all the mortgage-backed securities they were buying and the other whatever treasury purchases have been wrapped up. So we'll see how that plays out. Like I said, probably I'm calling a 1.25 point tops, and then the wheels really start turning because you think about all the marginal investments that happen with these firms, and like how many investments are based off getting low interest rates from various banks. But what if you really want to tighten requirements, because you can look at the reverse repo market. I don't want to get too dragged into that because I don't know how many of you guys actually pay attention to that. But if you really want to mess things up or correct things, you better start raising the reserve requirements too, because they were down at zero. Banks don't have to hold anything. Infinite fine fractional reserve banking, but essentially, so it's pretty. That's all pretty crazy. Now, here's the other thing. So this hasn't been widely reported. But according to the Russians, the Ministry of Defense, they have some additional documentation on these biolabs, and they're going public with them with some names. I believe one of the names is going to be like the head of the defense, whatever threat, DTRA, whatever it is, and some other additional information about those labs. And apparently one of them, near Odessa, there's even reports that they weren't allowing Ukrainian nationals in there while they were trying to exfil all the pathogens or various things that they had going on in there. So all you can presume is there's some kind of Western nation, U.S., that was in there cleaning things up, trying to get things squared away and get out of there. But I don't know. This is coming from the Russian side, so even if you think there's a little that they exaggerate a little bit, there's probably a kernel of truth into this, and I tend to lend a little more credibility on that because as we've seen, the Western media's lied time again. And in fact, here's another story to illustrate that that point. The New York Times has come out and admitted that the Biden laptop that they falsely claimed as Russian propaganda, ironically, is actually authentic, and we've all known that. And there's a number of people have known that. They've gotten information on there, clearly photos and tapes of Hunter doing some pretty illicit things, emails referring to various entities and people, and with pseudonyms that we can extrapolate who those are, and payment mechanisms and whatnot on there. But that's something else now, because I kind of wanted to stay on this other topics. 3 minutes in, I want to keep these kind of short. The last two little briefings I've given, I've talked about weapons falling in the Russian hands, us giving aid. At this point, we're giving aid, and these are essentially going to just fall in the Russians' hands. There's already reports of Russians training their own troops on some of the stuff that they have recovered on in the battle space. Now we have, the name eludes me, but it's a drone that they're going to send over there. It is capable of carrying ordnance. In fact, they're claiming these are defensive weapons, but this drone is definitely can be used offensively, and I don't know why the media hasn't really pushed on this, or even the markets really taken an eye to this. The fact that this is easily utilized as an offensive weapon. In fact, I would classify it as an offensive weapon. You can target, you can bomb things with it, and we'll see what happens there. If the Russians look at this as provocation, because to me, essentially, it's like a unmanned fighter jet. It's a drone, I know, but it's on the same lines, maybe not an exact equivalent, but to me, it's, well, what's the difference if you're from the looking at the Russian side of things, if NATO's involved? I don't know what else was going on. I mean, I look at the markets. We'll go wrap around back to the markets, and once this Fed thing came in, so they were, there's pricing in that quarter point hike, but now you have yield curves flattening, 5s and 10s, and if you look even further out, we're starting to see that happen. In fact, the 5 and the 10 was even for a little while. In fact, and I believe it inverted slightly, but either way, it's flattening out. substantially, and that has to deal with risk. So we'll see what happens. But there's already people talking about the next easing cycle, which is pretty astounding. But like I said, this is all for naught, in my opinion. We're damned if we do, damned if we don't. And if you look at, I know they, what was it yesterday? They reported some PPI. I think it was a PPI data was below expectations. But then if you look at the year over year, it was like 10%, which is still an astronomical number. But then if you look at export and import prices and the astronomical jumps in those, we're talking like, I think there was a month, the import prices up like 3% a month. And last month, we're talking about almost 6% in a couple months. We're talking year over year, God knows what, on both sides of those things. So you got to look at all this data put together, and you realize that the picture doesn't look that great. Then you take into account like some de-dollarization that's going on throughout the world now. We got Saudi Arabia that's talking about the one, basically a one oil dollar, or we call petro one, or whatever you want to say. Now, if that happens, it's not that you can't get oil with your dollars, but that is the shift here. These aren't punctuated moves in the like Rome didn't collapse overnight, right? These are punctuated, these are slow move, not punctuated, it's fast, but these are slow moves. I think everybody expects the punctuated move, like, oh, bam, this is it. No, you're going to have these moves. They're swift and slow. That's what I call the battle momentum, to relate it to that kind of terminology. This is, okay, there's a swift move, and then it slows. And then there's a realignment, and then another swift move. And eventually you've taken over whatever, you've taken over and won the war, right? So these are small battles that are not going our way, and the overall war, or the end state of that war, is going to be non-reserve status of the dollar and hyperinflation, in a sense, unless our Fed really cut pedals back. And even if they do, they're going to, one way, I don't know how they stop the flood of dollars back in here, because people are going to want to get something. These other nations are going to get something for the dollars that they've accumulated in their reserves. And like, what do you do? I don't know. At this point, we've gone so far off the rails. There was a time and a place to interdict this type of these scenarios, and it's eluded us, or it hasn't. Our politicians have eluded it, and done something else in the Federal Reserve as well. The chief orchestrator of this whole thing. Let me just go through this real quick. Journalist was fired who reports on Dr. Fauci a number of times on his finances, presumably, who knows. Oh, here's another thing. So we're apparently threatening China with sanctions too, or if they get involved, which seems pretty outlandish, because right now China is the manufacturing engine of the entire world at this point, which those are real goods and services, real capital goods and things that we consume. And with such bravado, just go around the world saying we're going to just like cut you off, we're going to do this and that. It's like, well, they actually produce things. They have things of real value. And what do we have? We consume. We give you these paper dollars that I don't even know what you can do with them anymore, especially if we start like going off oil like we were talking about before. But so that seems pretty outlandish. Plus, the militarization of China, their capabilities are, I would say, they're superior than the Russians, even if you take the nuclear armament disparity. But the Chinese military, there's things that we don't even know. I believe they have hypersonic missile systems as well, and the Russians do have them in certain areas. But I think the land forces of the Chinese and their air dominance is a little bit superior than the Russians. I think naval wise, I think the Russians probably have them just because their experience and their technology with their submarines, and then some of their special forces I think are superior than the Chinese. But overall, the Chinese are a whole nother animal. And plus that type of if you're talking about the Taiwan, and I know I'm getting into another side topic, but anyway, we're over here poking that bear. And if you're starting to see that alliance solidify with Russia and China, and then like I said, India, Turkey now, and various other nations that are willing to do business with Russia despite us. And I think we've made a kind of a clown show out of ourselves, and on an opportune moment. It kind of reminds me, granted this is like more of a battle, but I was just watching, I was just studying some of Napoleon stuff, and it was like, reminds me of Napoleon going into Russia and, winning all these battles presumably, but also at the same time weakening his own force to the detriment of the French military, this huge force, and then he ends up getting cut off, and the Russians got him. But it reminds me that and I just related to that, is like we're extending the boundaries of our resolve, but our we're coming up against our limitations on this, and we still think that we're the country we were even 20 years ago, that we can sustain something like this, where we've hollowed ourselves out, are a lot weaker than we once were, and we are stretching our necks out in and leaving that neck open to cut off our own heads. You know what I mean? So it's very troublesome, very troublesome. The markets are up, though, even after all this stuff. It's pretty crazy. I don't know if that's algorithmic trading, but be wary of any market rally. I'm just going to say that right now, because the Fed said in their thing that they got 6 rate hikes, and remember what I said. I pretty much calling they can't get past 1.5, 1.25% without things really turning sideways. And granted, there might be other things in the world that can happen. I mean, that's just me and my call, because last time we were at 2.25, and then we really had some interesting issues happen, and so I don't know what's going on here, to be honest. And I can look at the bonds; we're almost at 2.25 on the 10-year. Oil's rally back, and then remember what I said about oil supply. So there's been some other analysts that said the same thing that I said about oil supply in there. But here's the other thing: there is inflation out there. There is vast money printing. So these little news blips or whatnot, oil will go up because of this. Because there's more dollars chasing after a finite product that also is being goaded on the news organization. So it gives a little prod to those prices, so you help those dollar inflows into that. And people, let's say you had dollars too, and you were one of these countries watching what's going on, us bullying everybody. You would want to probably get out of those dollars as soon as possible. And one of the best ways, since we don't actually produce anything that they can tangibly export back out, what are they going to come over and buy more houses and a land? I guess, I don't know. So, or maybe cars. So what do? You might as well just exchange those for oil as you can. So I would anticipate this rise in oil is actually more be looked at almost like a demand. It is a more of a demand spike, or more people coming in there to exchange these dollars. And that's just in my opinion. I mean, there's anything in economics, despite what like Fox News, it's a lot more nuanced, because a lot of they don't understand the dynamics between what inflation is and what price increases and price decreases are. When you talk about supply and demand curves, whether you're moving up and down a curve, a supply and demand curve to find that, or you are actually shifting curves. They don't quite understand that. So they usually give you a very simplistic view. Not necessarily that they're completely wrong, but there's a lot more there's a lot more details into it. Gold is, down to 19. I personally would love to grab some more gold. I don't look at it as investment, gold or silver. Those are assets that you hold just to store wealth for the long term. It's a wealth store, and they are money. That's pretty much it. I think I had some other things. There's so much going on. There's a lot going on. It's impossible to cover in under 20 minutes, and that's why I try to keep this to. I guess I would say if it was me, there's a lot of things to look into, but I'd start studying a little bit on our southern border and what's going on with the drug cartels. It's been kind of glassed over from the media, but there's, like I said, there's been some shootings down there. Like I said, about a month ago, there was a supposed meeting, some intel that the cartels getting together and pretty much, giving the omnis dominus to targeting agents down there on the border, which is, to me, that's a declaration of war in a sense, and what are we doing over there giving drones to Ukraine when we need to solidify our own backyard over here? We're allowing our house to crumble and worrying about the neighbors. So anyway, I want to leave it there. I'll talk to you later. Peace.